taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast, your source for news, leaks, and insights about games and the gaming industry. It is January 18th, 2019. This is the Friday edition of the show. Of course, my name is Ashenity, and I'm here as always with Cybsidian. How you doing this morning, this afternoon, this evening? Depending on, I'm just being inclusive of everyone who's listening around the world. It could be midnight, could be noon, could be any time, literally.
Could be the end of the world if you're listening to us at the end of the world, or all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, if these archives last that long, could you imagine if there's somebody like 3,000 years from now listening to this? Hey, everybody in the future, please laugh at our primitive technology and our ridiculous predictions about the future, and enjoy yourselves. Have a good time as the world is ending. But it baffles me because I sometimes listen to old radio shows and stuff, and I remember listening to Jack Benny's very first appearance on radio and just thinking, did he have any concept that one day some scrub is going to be listening to this on his sci-fi device? Because I was listening to it on my phone like 100 years later almost. Like,
yeah, no, it would have blown their minds. And technology in the future, unless you're from the future or whatever, is going to be equally as insane. I always laugh at this because you hear the people who are in the lead of technology at certain things, or in the lead of certain fields or whatever. They'll look at a technology and they'll say, "That's never going anywhere. That's a fad. That's a flash in the pan, and there's no future in that." You had that with movie rentals. Blockbuster looks at Netflix and this mailing, people getting DVDs by mail, and then people watching movies online, and at every step of the way they're like, yeah, it's never gonna last. The blockchain stores, now that's the future.
That is the future. High overhead is the future.
Mm-hmm. And so it's just amazing to see how that happened. And to be fair, it's like you look at the movie industry and the so-called like Hollywood industry. So first it was silent pictures, and then it was sound and radio was the big thing, and then it was movies with sound, and then it was colored, like movies with Technicolor, and then it was television. And all along the way, there were the major stars of each of those shows. Very, very, very few of them transitioned from one to the next. You mentioned Jack Benny. He's a rarity in the sense that he was able to go from vaudeville, which was like before a lot of the technology. Then he managed to get into the radio. Then he managed to get into movies. Then he managed to get into TV, and stayed there at the top until he passed away. And that's amazing to me that there's so few people who were able to make that transition. And so it's the same thing with technology today. It's like it's like what you every time we see something like I hear this from a lot of people right now. TikTok's just a flash in the pan. It's never going to be big. Just wait a year. Just wait a year. Wait 2 years, and we'll see what happens. And yeah, it's
well, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, it could go the way of Vine, or it could be something that sticks around, because it kind of took the Vine formula. It took the Vine idea.
TikTok is here because of the lack of Vine, because this shorter content is what a lot of people enjoy. So we'll see where it goes. Speaking of which, we do have some skits that we're planning on putting up to TikTok, because we like to try other mediums just in case. So we got some really funny ones that are in the planning stage. But the other thing with Vine is you don't want to be a creepy old man posting on Vine, because then it's just like wrong on more than one level.
Yeah.
So we need to overcome that by doing doing stuff that is not based on creepy old guys doing TikTok videos with 14-year-olds. It just comes off as so wrong and creepy at the same time. And
I don't know who you're talking about. I'm staying the hell away from TikTok. Anyway, Welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast. Once again, hello everybody who is active in the chat. Mr. French86, Notional, Jason Cropper, Murden, and Bluntman, and Vendorek. Hello everybody. Bluntman says, no, the red dot is the true future. Absolutely. If you haven't seen our comedy sketch that we put out this week, definitely check that out. It's called The Dark Future of Gaming, or...
Dystopia.
Yeah, the gaming dystopia is the title, and the thumbnail is the dark future of gaming, with future crossed out and present written in, because we are in the gaming dystopia. So we made this comedy sketch.
We're apparently in a technological dystopia too, because Discord is not being good right now at all. So please, if there's any sound issues and errors, or if I become a robot, it's not my filter falling apart, it's the Discord.
Yes, and Notional is commenting about Discord and kind of being wonky in the chat as well. Well, hopefully we can get through this with the connection remaining strong. Mr. French86 asks, what do you all think about Days Gone? I haven't looked into it very much myself.
It looks pretty interesting. I'm not a huge fan of the protagonist, in the sense of like, ooh, can't wait to play a scrubby old guy with biker guy with a bad attitude. It's like, shockingly, that doesn't actually appeal to me. I know, it's the height of awesomeness and coolness, but yeah, for me, just doesn't really click it. The positive sides of it is it looks really, really beautiful, and a really, really good take on the zombies, actually. Like a pretty good take on the zombies. The way that the combat with the zombies, it seems a little wonky, but that's being like I'm being like super picky when I pick that apart. Overall, I have to say that it looks solid. It really does look quite solid. It looks pretty good as an experience that is interesting, and the new take on the zombies is definitely, I mean, that's definitely a good thing, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, overall, it really does look good. Now, from here, going forward, it's like, how exactly is it going to play, and is it going to be like good? I think it'll be a good adventure. I don't know how much replayability that it'll have, but it definitely looks like a good playthrough. So yeah, I would say for now, if you're wanting, like, buy or not, it looks like it's probably going to be a decent buy, but definitely wait until you get just a little bit more. Like, don't pre-order this stuff, please don't pre-order. But overall, I mean, it's definitely looking better than some of the other zombie games. I mean, what was that? There was a recent zombie game that was out that just bombed horribly. I can't even remember the name of it now. So the genre has been kind of running into some issues. Now, most of that was due to gameplay. So I would say, just make sure the gameplay is good.
Yeah,
but no,
enough.
Overall, it's good, and it's interesting to see a bit of a new take on the zombies, because one of the things that's cool is that you can trip the zombies up, which totally makes sense. Because I always thought it was kind of strange that zombies became suddenly experts in parkour, and it's like, no, they would be like, you throw a banana near their way, and you're gonna trip the whole mass of them.
And how are they stronger than when they were alive? Like.
Well, that's the other thing too that I really don't get about zombies, is like, suddenly you have superhuman strength, and you can, like, and you don't end up tearing your hands to pieces. I remember one of the zombie movies. I was so disgusted with the general concept behind it. It's like you got zombies tunneling through 6 feet of reinforced steel-plated concrete. It's like, no, that just doesn't work, guys. Like, okay, 6 feet reinforced steel-plated concrete. You're gonna need you know those giant worms that you see in some sci-fi shows? Yeah, you're going to need at least one of those. Yeah, not a you know, emaciated, deteriorated zombie who, you know, in the same shot, in the same scene, you can kill it with like this light touch to the head with a bat. It's like, oh, but they can tunnel through concrete just fine. It's like, good Lord, it's just so stupid. so I'm glad, you know, like I said, I like the concept. The concept of zombies is that they're not strong, they're not individually powerful. You could probably easily take one out. The problem with zombies in most quote unquote most of the lore, not all, is that it's the fact that you get a scratch, you get a bite, and that there's just so many of them. That's what's scary about zombies. It's not because they're Supermen. Because if they were Supermen, you're screwed. There's no living through. There's zero chance of anybody living through a zombie apocalypse if they suddenly get twice as strong, twice as fast, don't eat, don't sleep, and can hear and see better than they were when they were alive. Yeah. It's like, if that happens, humanity's doomed, like, the next day. Now, if they're slower, if they're easier to kill, if they aren't very coordinated, then yeah, their danger is the fact of the disease.
It's their disease, and it's their sheer numbers. Like,
yeah,
and that's what I like about. I like how The Walking Dead did it for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Although that show had its, I mean, it has its own problems with the logic.
Yeah,
of it. You have to suspend disbelief
problems
for any zombie thing, but but yeah, I prefer that to the zombie Superman thing. But anyway, if you're listening live today, please say hello in the live chat. A lot of you already have. Send us your questions and comments there as well. And don't forget to slam that like button and tell us that you appreciate this content. All right, let's get to the actual gaming news, which is probably what people are actually here for. I don't know. We have lots of things to talk about today. We've got, of course, EA has canceled another Star Wars game that was in development. We'll jump into that first, and then we have some more news about some news about Death Stranding for the first time in ages. And so we'll talk about.
Well, not ages. It's kind of in the news right now. So
yeah, well, there hasn't been much, but we'll talk about what was in Kojima's magic box that he brought with him to a very particular place. The Division 2 is. We know it's going to be microtransaction laden. Is it going to have loot boxes? We're going to have a bit of a discussion about that, and then we've got some news about Anthem to round it out. So, all right, EA has canceled a Star Wars game that was in development at its Vancouver studio, and thankfully nobody was laid off this time, and they didn't close the studio like they did with Visceral when they canceled Visceral's Star Wars game that was in production. But they did cancel another this open world Star Wars game that we talked about back when Visceral was closed down. We talked about how this open-world Star Wars game was in production and how we were looking forward to that in lieu of Visceral's game, and now this one has been shut down. And I'll let Saib talk about the why they did that and what the implications of this are. Reactions have been mixed. A lot of people are saying EA should just... that Disney should remove the Star Wars IP.
Should not have the license, period. Yeah, like, again, it's like they took the license. They're a huge studio. They could have done, off the top of my head, so they could have had, like, you know, they could have set up a mobile RPG, which they kind of did. They could have had a running series of Battlefronts. Probably could have had about 4 of them out by now if they had done it right to begin with. Or could have just had one and then just kept on expanding on it and made it, you know, basically free to play. And they could definitely have had an open world game out by now. It's been like, what, 6-7 years now. They could also have had, amongst other things, they could have had an actual, you know, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter game. They could have had a strategy 4X game. They definitely could have had a racing game, more than one. there's more than one different types of it. They could have had a whole ton of additional mobile games, everything from Pazak to that chess-like game, which I know there's a name for it. I just forget it off the top of my head because I didn't memorize it at the beginning of the show when I showed up. That the Wookiee and the droid play.
That strategy, that game on the Millennium Falcon, the holographic.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like a chess game. Now, the thing with that is that it's a real thing. The rules, as far as I understand, have been completely fleshed out for it. And that again, this is another thing that they could have done in a mobile game or something, and pushed out. Let's see. On top of that,
for sure.
They could have had a really fancy like Starfighter game where you build and customize and create your own starship, and then you battle it against other starships and stuff like that. They could have had probably one or two that I'm not thinking about. The most best Star Wars games that have come out recently are all the Lego games.
Yes. And
that's because the Lego franchise, they're actually doing their, they actually know how to make games that are popular. They actually know how to make good content. And they can surprisingly do it and keep it relatively PG as well. But again, those are just kids games. Like it's just not, there's 1,000 things that could be done better, could be done smoother, and should have been done honestly 1,000 times before. But there's not. And why not? Because EA doesn't know how to make games. Just putting it out frankly, they never knew how to make games aside from sports games. The only thing that they really know how to make is how to publish games. And even then, they're really kind of bad at that. Like, EA is in its position because they got there because of luck more than anything else. It's a new industry, and they managed to luck out on a bunch of titles. They funded a bunch of games and they took a huge cut of some of them, and were shocked that they made money. It's like, and they're having financial trouble because of that same concept. So the concept is that games have spiked in the past 20 years as far as their social impact and the amount of people playing them, and they continue to do so. But it's like, at some point there's this demand that they make even more money than there is room for an audience. And we didn't talk about it on the podcast. So there's this one thing. It was a niche market inside of a niche industry. And the guy had this crazy growth. Year over year, he quadrupled the company. And he thought this would go on forever. He didn't do the math and realize that there's only X amount of people that he can sell this product to. He was under the impression that this product would just keep going and that he would never run into a wall. Of course, anybody who knows how to do basic math could have looked at him and said, no, eventually you're going to run out of, you might be able to sell to every single person who could possibly fit inside your marketability. However, there's a point where you're just going to run into a wall, and that's going to stop. And then it becomes a job. Then your primary job is maintaining your position. And growing slowly or looking to new markets. But the market that he was chasing had a limit. And that's how, and some people run into that wall and they never realize that they've run into that wall, or they never really realize that the wall is there. And that's how you have companies that go bankrupt. And the exact same thing is now happening with EA and Activision. It's like they've overshot what they think. Why? Because the best-selling game of 2018 was an Activision game, and it didn't sell enough copies. Now, there's the problem. It's the best-selling game of 2019. Unfortunately, it didn't sell enough to please the investors, so now the investors are mad and pulling out. Why? Because they were promised that they could sell an unlimited number of these things. We can sell 12 billion copies. Well, hold on. There's only like, 7 billion people on the planet that could actually make use of this. The rest of them are either too old or too young to be able to purchase this thing. Doesn't matter. We can still sell 12 billion copies. Like, at some point, you got to look at them and you got to say, you guys are stupid. You don't know what you're doing. Your crazed quest for growth is ultimately going to kill you because you're too stupid to see this, to see how this works. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be cruel or overly mean, but that's essentially what's going on. And it's like, well, I guess that's just the way some people think, and for whatever reason.
Well, when we look at what the reasons were behind this, according to the Kotaku article on this, which they broke the story, when EA's top decision makers looked at the roadmap for the next few years, they decided that they needed something earlier than the planned release date for this open world game, according to two people familiar with what happened. So they canceled it in favor of a smaller scale Star Wars project that's now aimed for much sooner, likely late 2020.
Yes.
Do you think, though, that they could have made a move like this without Disney's either knowing about it or having to get their approval?
Well, they've never had to get approval for anything. There's no running back to, for some of the people that were involved in some of these projects. There's no them, calling up Disney and saying, I'd like to appeal to the board because this decision that EA is making is stupid. EA gave them unlimited permission in doing whatever the hell they wanted to and whatever they thought could work. So they've been stumbling around a room like somebody who, in a pitch black room, somebody's stumbling around because they can't find the lights. It's been ridiculous. And this is another showcase, which also is really important to point out. So it's better to launch a larger game, more polished, about a year or two into a console. Because not everybody buys the console in the first year that it's out. A lot of people have to, they finish up their current playlist, or they wait for a sale, or they wait for the price to drop. You certainly have a large amount of sales in the first year, but you have continuing sales throughout the next few years. And in fact, in some cases, it stays pretty much like even. For the Xbox, it actually went up in their last release because the launch was so abysmal that it was terrible, and they've actually sold more copies from their later pushes than their first release window. So in this particular case, it's actually strategically more logical to polish up a game, make it huge, make it really big, and then have it as a number one selling title a year after the initial launch. Blah, blah, blah. What this says to me strongly is that I think EA has gotten the confirmation that they are not going to get a renewal on this license. I think this is what this means. And what this means, flat out, for putting it into English speak, is that EA is running out of time, and they're not going to get a renewal on the license.
So they got to get out what they can.
Case, then they don't have the time to wait. They got to get this game out before 2022. I think is when they're probably going to, where the contract is up for renewal, and all existing games are kind of theirs that they have to put out, and they have to come up with an agreement for, which is already in the contract. But any new games can't be released. So this is huge. This is huge, because what this means is that the grip that EA has on the franchise is probably dying, or and this is a big or they're making a bid at trying to say, hey, look, we've got this title out and it had some reasonable success, and look at how much money it's making, and look at how much money that game has made, and we can do better, and now we're in a better position to make more games, and so therefore this is what this is what we have to do. And that's their pitch, so to speak. They'll need to re-up the contract, and so that they want to get this game out before they do that.
Right.
Because if they lose the contract, then they lose all the work that they put into this game. If they can get it out beforehand, then that strengthens their hand, or it allows them to recoup at least more of the money that they wanted to make with the contract that they had. So I don't know. Am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah.
Or am I? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. That makes sense. So they want to. They kind of need to. So you suspect that they are running out of time on their contract, and they really need to be able to show something for.
Yeah.
For this in order to get it renewed or possibly
and I suspect that because here's the thing. So EA Vancouver was the ones who got all the visceral stuff, and I think they weren't able to transition as much of the content over and make it as big as they were wanting to, and due to this, unfortunately, it looks like this has put them into a corner, and they're in trouble because they knew that they couldn't. They realized that they couldn't get out in enough time, and that they couldn't hire enough people to get this game out and really push it out. So what they've opted for is a smaller subset of the game than what the open world game was going to get. So by doing that, they can create a smaller experience and they can get that out faster. But again, I have this feeling that I think they're going to lose the contract. I think they're going to get in some serious trouble. I think that I don't think Disney has admitted just recently through basically like the way that the money is looking and a bunch of other stuff. It appears as if they've run into a wall when it comes to the fandom of Star Wars, because they've screwed it up so royally that they're now at the point of they can't make this thing work. It's not going to work anymore. They're at an impasse, and they can't figure it out now. Is essentially what's going on. And I think ultimately that's gonna end their control over it. So
just too bad. There is another
yeah. I'm not phrasing that good enough, I think. So basically Disney is like, they've realized that their last movie is not doing well. They realized that the majority fans are turning against them, not against them necessarily, but they're just not interested in it because it's not giving them what they want. Sure, it's got fancy visuals, but the story and the science of it is kind of falling apart. Plus the whole story used to be about the Skywalker lineage, and now that just is, that was what the previous content was about. Then they killed all that content and they said it's all legacy content, and then they've really killed it off. Like, they were supposed to be twins, and there aren't, and they're supposed to be
in the expanded universe.
Yeah, and so there's supposed to be all this stuff, and it's just not there. And the majority of the community is going, yeah, we're just not really interested in this anymore. I'm sorry to say it, but we're just really not interested in it. And
well, I think it goes way beyond just the lack of the expanded universe content. But let's not get off on that rabbit trail, because that'll be another 3 hours. But that said, there is another Star Wars game in production at EA. Jedi Fallen Order is in production at Respawn, which is the studio responsible for Titanfall. So Jedi Fallen Order is scheduled for fall of 2019 currently. So I guess we'll have to see how that one does.
Blunt Man is referring to Yeah, just who needs to write, fancy movie scripts when they can just look at what the fans are creating and just steal their concept and ideas and take that for a run around yeah, it's way cheaper than shooting it yourself, especially when you make the person sign new agreement that they won't make any money from it. So the community puts the content forward, and then Disney just steps in and takes it over and goes, yeah, this is making money, so this is all good now. It's like that whole thing basically showcased why the whole Disney Star Wars franchise is faltering. It's because you guys don't understand your audience. You don't understand what people are actually looking for, and you can't write a cohesive story to save your butt. So yeah, I think that's what we're looking at.
It really is a sad situation. As an old school Star Wars fan, it's a sad situation. But anyway, another Star Wars game canceled. Luckily, they didn't can the studio this time. But that's, I guess, all that there really is to say about that. But we'll move on to happier things. So, Death Stranding. So there's an interesting story behind this one. So Hideo Kojima got the engine he's using his studio is using to build Death Stranding is the Decima engine from Guerrilla Games, the developers behind Horizon Zero Dawn. And the folks at Guerrilla Games gave him this engine in this little box. And now, about 3 years later, he went back to their studio carrying the same box with the first 2 hours of Death Stranding in it. And he took it out, he played it for them, and apparently they were absolutely blown away. They've been all over Twitter talking about this. Two of the devs of that studio said they were speechless, and a lot of them were talking about just how amazing this looked. Now, you can expect, of course, that working in close partnership with Kojima, and I mean, what an adorable story. I'm sorry, that's just... You see a picture of this box, you can find it online. It's just, I don't know, something about it. Just... There's just sort of this richness to the honoring of this business relationship that this adds, and I don't know if it's sort of Kojima's Japanese culture that plays into this kind of...
It goes back, not thousand, it goes back hundreds of years, too, because the whole...
the whole story.
Name, and then the way that these two companies treat each other, it's the exact same way that the original Dutch treated the Japanese, and the way that the Japanese treated the Dutch when they first started.
Yes, even the name of the Decima engine, because
it's named after the island that they were.
Guerrilla Games is a Dutch studio.
It's brilliant.
And Kojima Productions is based in Japan, obviously, and so when they came up with this agreement to use this engine, they called it the Decima engine, which was named after an island or a trading post that was used as like a meeting point.
It was an island.
Yeah, it was the name of an island that was used as a trading post between the Dutch and the Japanese way back. So there's all kind. It's fascinating. Like you can't make this stuff up. It's such a fascinating little story behind this. But anyway, he brought this box with the first couple hours of Death Stranding. He played it for them, and they all seem incredibly impressed. Now, you can expect, working in close partnership with Kojima, that they're not going to smack talk the game publicly. But it does appear like they're going above and beyond to praise it. It's not just like, oh yeah, this was great. It was like, I can't stop thinking about what I saw in this game. It's blowing me away. I'm speechless. This kind of a thing, like this kind of over the top. So either they're it doesn't seem like they're just talking out of their asses. It seems like they were genuinely blown away and impressed by this.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, that's about the whole story. Do you have any other comments about that?
Well, just kind of also reiterating on the because we never really covered it. It was the Tokyo Game Show trailer as well, and the fact that that there's been some talk about the release date. So this marks the 3-year anniversary that Kojima started production of the game. This does not count for the several months that he spent hiring people after this. So the game has not truly been in hardcore development for quite a while. It has not been in development for how to say this correctly. So it's the 3-year anniversary since he got the code and started working on the game. I would say the game has been in hardcore development for about 2.5 years, and so typically we're expecting to see this game within about I'd say anywhere between probably a year to probably 2 years, because again, it's like there was a lot of things Kojima had to do to build the studio and to get it running, and a lot of that was hiring, and a lot of that was bringing on people, and I believe they've still been hiring over the last couple of months here. So it's definitely still a work in progress, and they're building a studio on top of building a game. So that does separate your focus a little bit. So I would assume, and I would highly suggest, and I would highly mention that there's a good chance that we're not necessarily going to get our hands on this thing right away. Don't expect this thing this year. There's a small chance that I think it could come out this year. It depends on how. It depends on where they're at. So Norman Reedus has mentioned that he's almost done wrapping up his motion capture and his recording lines and his performance capture and all that kind of stuff. Typically, you're going to see at least a 6-month delay once the main actor finishes up his work, before you can get that before the game is shipped to go. And we know this from all the voice actors that we know we've met and we've talked to over the years. It's typically like a 6-month window at the very least. In some cases, it's a lot shorter, but those are typically indie studios, and they're typically a very, very, very much smaller project. A very, very small project. Now, we still don't know the whole scope of the game. We know that the first 3 hours are in a playable state, and that the Guerrilla was able to see it and was able to comment on it, and it was very positive. So that does kind of lay out the thought that maybe this game could come out in 2019, could come out this year. We could see it as a fall release. There's definitely probably some possibility for that, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna say lean more towards 2020 just now, because I know that he wants to polish this thing up. He wants to make it really, really smooth. He wants to make it really, really good. But he also has a really high work ethic, and so do almost everybody that are working for him at the studio. Like, a lot of his people work 16 hours a day, 5-6 days a week. Some of them basically live in the studio. So I wouldn't put it past them. I would not put it past them. But I also don't want to get you overly excited to have it this year, when looking at it from kind of an outsider position, they need at least 3 years on it, and that would put it at kind of like this fall-ish is at the absolute earliest when it could be done. So probably maybe spring 2020. I think that's probably a fairly solid bet. But yeah, it's really interesting. We'll see where it's at. It's interesting to note that Cyberpunk, Starfield, and Death Stranding all started work pretty much at around the same time. Like heavy development. They had all been planned out for years ahead of time, with legendary people in the industry spending long years of planning, of meticulously creating the worlds. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when all 3 of these games hit the shelves at once, if that's the case, because they're all going to be launching. I suspect all of these games are going to be launching within a year of each other, and so this is going to be really interesting to see and what the ultimate product we see from all of these titles are, because they're all similar in the concept of they had been worked on for a decade beforehand, in the mind of some of the greatest creators of video games, and then they started work at roughly all the same time. They're all utilizing an engine that's been heavily revamped from its first or from its most recent game. And so this is going to be this is really interesting. This is absolutely fascinating to watch as this stuff kind of like heads into each other. Yeah, so really, really cool. So we'll see what we've got a European studio, we've got an Asian studio, and we've got an American studio. And it's really interesting to see who's going to pull out first place. And it's going to be really interesting to see how many people are playing this game 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 18 months down the road, 24 months down the road. It's going to be really fascinating to watch because overall, you can look at the previous games that all of these people have worked on, and they're all very popular, but only one of those series are being played right now by over 10,000 people today. So that's really interesting too. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. That's basically all we really have on this. It's really interesting. It's kind of a catch-up thing. I suspect we will see something from them definitely at E3. Not at E3, but around E3, because Sony's not going to E3. So it's not going to be at E3. It's going to be showing up in the same general vicinity of E3. So in the summer, we expect to see more of it, whether it's at one of the other conventions, or whether it's at the big Sony convention, or whether it's a couple weeks later at some of the other places that it might show up. We'll see where it goes, or what it may end up having its grand exposure on the Game Awards next year, because that especially if it's a spring release next year, I think that they might show up at the Game Awards after doing some heavy teasing and showing off some more trailers during the summer, and then coming out to announce the release date at the Game Awards. I think this is something that we can expect to see, because they're really good friends, and it makes sense in a lot of ways for them to announce it there. The last Game Awards did really, really well, and it's now gathering enough force that, again, if they pull it off, I think that might become the new, quote unquote E3. It definitely makes sense for them to do that that way. So yeah, we'll see.
Yes, Notional Death Stranding just oozes happiness. At least that box story, that makes me happy. You're listening to the Augmented Reality Podcast, and we love seeing everybody so active in the live chat. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, we welcome you to join our Discord community. You can find the link in the description below. It's a place where you can chat with us and other Triple S fans about all the things we love to talk about. Stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. Click the link below to join, and be sure to say hi to us in the welcome channel. And by the way, we have a content requests channel there as well. And we are just a couple episodes away from our 100th episode of Augmented Reality, if you can believe that. So that's actually, unless something wonky happens, that'll be happening next Friday. So we should do something special for that. So if you have any ideas what we should do, you can let us know. All right, so moving on. So the Division 2, of course, is on its way, and looking at the current state of the gaming industry, there's a lot of questions about, is it going to have microtransactions? Now, of course, we know it's going to have microtransactions. We know that. That's basically all but confirmed.
It's what state will the microtransactions
the question
be in?
So the question is are there going to be loot boxes? And Cyber's been following this a lot more than I have. But
I have some context on it. However, this is one of the points where we're not going to talk about what the contact said directly, because we can't confirm it. What we know is that the game will feature microtransactions, period. That's a done deal. Why is it a done deal? Because the First Division has them. It went free to play-ish, sort of, and it has a ton of microtransactions riddled through the game. You can get loot boxes, and there's a bunch of other stuff. We know that, for the most part, Division 2 is going to have that, and the main reason as to why is that the previous game had it, and it was quite successful. So that's
Are you talking about the previous Division game or the previous Ubisoft game?
no, both. Like so, in the Division, you've got season pass, you've got outfits, you've got all that kind of stuff, and people gobble that stuff up and have been gobbling that up for quite a while now. So it makes sense that they're going to reuse that on top of the fact that the last Assassin's Creed game is also heavily in that direction as well. And so that is, it's yeah, it's
so your
it's
money
problematic. It's problematic.
Your money is on there being loot boxes in the game.
Yeah,
not just microtransactions, but actual loot boxes. The very thing that we trashed EA for.
No. Oh, back it up.
No?
We know that there's going to be microtransactions.
Right.
We don't know whether there's going to be loot box microtransactions.
Right. I was saying, is that your suspicion though?
No. I think that they might opt for more of the season pass style. The season passes have a little bit more advantage over traditional microtransactions because it regulates you more for your income. You know that you're going to receive X amount of money, and you know that's how it's going to be because that's how it's more or less laying itself out. In the generalized concept of what would those entail and what would be, what type are we going to see, or how is that going to affect the microtransactions that we're going to get in the future game, is that in this case you'll have the season pass, and then you also have options to buy additional stuff. And it's how much of that additional stuff is going to be geared in what direction. We know that they're going to have microtransactions because right now, if you pre-order the various versions of the game right now on the Epic Store, it's not on Steam. It's not coming out onto Steam. It's coming out exclusively onto the new Epic Store, and you can buy these different versions of it. And the different versions of it, one of them grants you more inventory space than the lower version. So we know that inventory space is going to be something that you're going to be able to buy with real world money. So this is, yeah.
Okay. All right. That's another interesting aspect of it, is that it's going to be releasing on the Epic Store only. We talked about,
well, I think it'll be in their Ubisoft store as well, but it's not coming out to Steam.
Not coming out to Steam. And I wonder if they're going to opt into the user reviews section. We talked about this on Tuesday. The Epic Store was criticized somewhat for not having user reviews, and some speculated that some game devs might gravitate to the Epic Store because of that. Now, it's since been announced that the Epic Store is going to be adding user reviews, but it's going to be an opt-in program. So game developers who put their games on the Epic Store, they get to choose whether or not their game is going to get user reviews, which is a very bizarre way of doing it, in my opinion. I mean, user reviews are the only they're the only reliable reviews these days. I don't know. I can't trust media reviews at all. So
yeah, well, nor would you want to. So, it's for sure. It's
because then, like, what if they were to do something like, change things after the fact in a way that people don't like, pull a Call of Duty, add loot boxes after the fact, after all the reviews are out, then there would be no way of indicating that. There would be no way for users to go in and say, hey, wait a second, thumbs down on that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see. I mean, it depends whether or not they opt into that program or not. It depends on a lot of this is all speculation at this point, but it's a very interesting thing. It could be that they're just going to Epic so that the Epic Store, because they take less of a cut than Steam. That's a probable reason as well.
Mm-hmm. No, and so I mean we're gonna see where this goes from here, and it's again this is coming out at a time where there's a lot of games. They're coming out. They're bringing this out after. They're bringing this out after Anthem comes out. On top of Anthem, you've got in that same week you're gonna have Far Cry New Dawn is out, Crackdown is gonna be out, and Metro Exodus is all gonna be out. On top of which I can't believe I'm having a hard time remembering, but the new Key Sword Fighter Disney slash
Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom
Hearts 3, yeah.
That's coming out. It's like, so they're coming out on the Epic Store. They're not coming out on Steam. It's quite an expensive game to order. It's very much on the high end of what you have to buy, and then immediately getting into the game, you're going to need to or want to buy, more bag space, and then you're going to be told, hey, get the season pass so you can unlock this, and you can unlock that, and you can unlock this skin, and you can unlock this weapon, and you get this weapon if you do this, and it just keeps going up from there. And at some point somebody's got to say, enough is enough,
or
maybe
going to stop.
Not.
Like,
maybe,
this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like it's something that you can easily sink. I could easily spend over $200 on this with its packages right now, because not only is the pre-order stuff, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different versions of the game, but you also have different pre-order bonuses from different stores. For example, if you pre-order from EB Games or from GameStop, you get some different bonuses than if you were to order it from Amazon, or if you were to order it from Walmart even, I think. And so it's at this point you're sitting there going, okay, if I want to collect all this stuff, I'm ordering 3 copies of the game. Each of those copies are costing me anywhere between 70 and $120 each.
Jeez.
And then on top of that, you get into the game, you add on all your codes, and you're going to be like, oh, and plus the season pass is going to be this much, plus I'm going to buy a whole bunch of these microtransactions for either more bag space or some cosmetic items or stuff like that. And it's really through the roof right now. It's like,
more bags.
I don't know. It's
a microtransaction for more bag space is almost as absurd as a microtransaction for a freaking dot.
And I got to say this, and I got to give credit to Honest Trailers, because they did this in their Honest trailer review. So this is a game in which you play a secret government agent who walks around shooting looters in the face in the name of the government, then loots the same stores that they just shot the looters in, taking the stuff for themselves to use for themselves.
But they deserve it, because they
well, that's government bureaucracy for you. Yeah. And then they take no steps to avoid catching a deadly biohazard disease, because they go exploring these areas where the biohazard disease is heavily contaminated in these zones. But you're doing this in your street clothes, not only in your street clothes, because this is now summer, this isn't winter anymore. You're going to be running around in sleeveless t-shirts, schoolgirl outfits, clown costumes, and short shorts, and you're going to be looting the stuff, food and water and supplies. Then you'll be taking those food, water, and supplies from these contaminated zones, and you're going to be giving them to civilians, and the civilians are going to be giving you rewards like their clothes from their diseased bodies, because they're about to die. And the whole time you're putting this stuff on, and then you find out that everyone from the surviving government forces to the military to firefighters, that they're all your enemies. And then when you survive against all of them, you find out who the real enemy is, and the real enemies are your fellow division agents, because they're turning on you in the in the dark zones. And again, now this was originally put together by the Honest trailer, guys, and it's really, really, really hilarious for the first honest trailer for the first Division. But it's none of this has changed. Like, none of this has changed at all. It's still the same concept. And again, it's like, no wonder society is falling apart. What beautiful government bureaucracy, when the bureaucracy ends up killing everybody, including the military and and local militias or local gangs or whatever trying to survive, on top of killing each other when you just need, hey man, I gotta put a bullet in your back because, dude, that t-shirt you got, I don't have a purple one. I need to have a purple t-shirt, man. And of course, there's no trading in the game, so if you really do see somebody, like we encountered this in the first game, if you picked up something and said, "Oh wow, I just got this really cool item," and your buddy's like, "Oh man, I really need that." Well, I can't drop it or give it to you. Well, here, I'll just go rogue and kill you, or you go rogue and then I'll kill you. You know, either way, I'll kill you, and then I'll pick up your thing and then I'll put it on the helicopter, and then we have it. And again, it's like, what? Why is this a thing? And so, I don't know. It's
yeah. That said, there was some more details about the Dark Zones released recently, and it looks like they are making some significant improvements over the first game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely from when we stopped playing it, because we stopped playing it pretty early on. Now, they've made a lot of these really cool changes. There's now like basically structured PvP fights. You can't body camp anymore, because if you're flagged and you walk and you go to one of the entrances or exits, there's now mounted turrets that'll just kill the other players. Which again, it's like people can take advantage of that. And they actually show that you can lure some of the NPCs towards the turrets, and the turrets will just kill them. So again, this is like you've got two looters standing around. Hey Joe, hey Dave, what's going on? I don't know. It's pretty dangerous here. You know, this biocontaminant area is like really seeping through all our clothes, and maybe we should just get out of here and go home and like, you know, make some supper or something. Sorry, I had to take a drink. And he goes, nah, we shouldn't do that. We'd have to walk by those turrets, and those turrets are really dangerous. They'll just shred us to death. Oh, hey, look, there goes one of those government agents. He's got a bag full of like a t-shirt and maybe some ammo, looks like. Oh, let's kill him. Oh, he's run into the safe zone. It doesn't matter, we can take it. But I thought you just said, no, we can take it. Oh, okay, I guess if we could take it. And then mowed down by the Gatling guns. And it's just, again, the whole premise is kind of a little bit on the ridiculous side. Not to say that the premise for the game, the premise for the Dark Zones is just kind of all over the place. And it's like, if they had made this a game about like, you know, some kind of like non-sentient alien virus coming down, a lot of this stuff would have just made a whole lot more sense. Like legitimately, wouldn't it have made more sense for there to be like these like zombie-ish / like people who lost their minds versus people who are just trying to survive and they're just trying to loot a store, but then you walk in and you kill them because you need those electronics for your weapon upgrade.
And then the twist, the alien virus, it turns out, actually infected the government, and everyone else is healthy. Oh wait, that's too close to reality. Never mind.
Yeah.
So anything else about Division 2 then?
It's still on my list. We're still keeping an eye on it. We're still potentially going to give it a shot. I'm not impressed with it. Let's just put it that way. I'm not super impressed with it, generally speaking. I know that there's been a lot of improvements made, and maybe what I should do is I should whip up the old Division 1, step into it, see all the changes, and then make it. Because right now I'm just going off of what I've seen. The other thing that I know that they've done in Division 2 is that the engine has had a massive upgrade, because the Division 1 was severely limited due to a lot of issues with the engine and with the way that the game played and all the associated problems they had with it. And in all honesty, I understand that the reason why they didn't make more expansions for Division 1 is because they couldn't. They'd had to have to like rebuild the game within a new engine and then basically relaunch the game. And not that that's impossible, but it's just easier to do, and you get a little bit more interest in it if you just make a new game and you just call it Division 2. So that's basically what's going on here. Plus, it's in the summer now, so way more costume potential, because before you had winter items and winter accessories, and that was it. Now you have summer accessories and everything summer you could possibly think of, and that's really good because there's a lot of summer things that you could be doing, and that's pretty awesome. Frankly, it's pretty cool. So, and like I said, I've heard a rumor that there's a schoolgirl outfit for the females that you can get. So we'll hold that off on rumors for now. But I wouldn't put it past them. The schoolgirl outfit was one of the most popular items in the item packs that you could get in APB Reloaded, or APB Reloaded again, or APB Reloaded again. That game has had so many different
well, the schoolgirl outfit you speak of, government issue, combat ready?
Totally combat ready. There's pictures of the guys walking around with sleeveless t-shirts on and stuff like that. And again, it's like you're walking into these biohazard areas, and it's like brilliant, excellent. That's a great idea. Again, if they just made this all about some alien spores, or again, it's like non-sentient but just drives people crazy. It's like probably could have been better than, oh, it's a virus that's aimed at it's aimed at killing off 95% of the human race, so that way the human race stops killing the planet. I have a little bit of a surprise for you. This storyline is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. If you kill off 95% of the population tomorrow, you don't have a greener planet 50 years from now. You have a dead, irradiated planet 50 years from now. Because what happens is there's a lot of things in those worlds, such as, I don't know if you've heard of these things, they're called nuclear reactors, where if you don't have the highly skilled people that are required to run these things and to make sure that the waste product from this stuff, or that the pre-usage fuel from these products are not taken care of in an absolutely perfect way, that you'll have giant sections of the livable planet spread with so much radiation that everything will pretty much die off. The concept just doesn't work when you actually sit down and look at it from a logical perspective, but using logic to figure out game story is probably not a great thing for me to be doing.
If we start pulling strings on every sort of fantastical game storyline, they're all going to fall apart pretty fast, but a lot of them anyway. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we'll leave that one there. So we are. This might be a bit of a shorter episode today, but you had something with Anthem you wanted to talk about.
Right. So Anthem is coming up here. It's going to be up next week, and so there's the kind of the VIP demo, and then you have the public beta, which is on the 1st. Now, both of these, as I understand, as I'm hearing, both of these are going to be the same demo that we had, just more stability from the December demo. And it's basically a demo. It is not the full game. You're not even, from what I understand, you're not even installing like all the game files on your computer. It's a significantly smaller version, on top of the fact that it's a somewhat restricted version as well, and that it does not feature any of the additional gameplay or changes that we have seen in the development process since the last month and a half. This was put together in November, and it has not, aside from stability changes, it has not changed that much. There are two different versions of the game, the full release and then this quote-unquote demo release that's coming out. And aside from server stability, there's not been much that has been changed on it. So this is going to be a pretty good snapshot of what the game is like, kind of in a early-ish demo-ish kind of build. It's not going to contain everything, but it is going to be representative of most of what the game has to offer. On top of that, we know that the full game is going to have, obviously, the story and all that kind of stuff behind it. So definitely something to check out. It is free. You can access it, play it via Origin on the 1st of February. You can pre-download it a couple days ahead of time. It's only going to be for a weekend. And then right after that, you actually have the Division demo that's also or pre-order that you have to do in order to get access to that. So that's kind of going to be interesting too. That's a week later. So yeah, definitely check it out. We're going to check it out. We're going to play it. We're going to mess around with it. We're going to mess around with it with a couple of people, and we're going to see what the game has to offer. But yeah, so just keep your heads open for that. And then basically past that, what are you guys interested in seeing? Please let us know in the comments and join our Discord and let us know. Do you want to see us get into Crackdown, Metro Exodus? What was the other one? The Division and
any games that are coming up that you want us to take a look at.
Oh yeah, and Far Cry 2. Yeah, Far Cry was the other one. So two post-apocalyptic games, and then you have Crackdown, which is an apocalypse in process because you can just walk around and destroy everything. So that game is going to be hilarious when people find out ways to create a chain reaction that destroys the whole city in 5 minutes. That's going to be pretty cool. That's going to be pretty fun. So let us know what you guys are interested in seeing from any of the games that we talked about, from any of the games that are coming out in February. There's a ton of them. On top of that, we have a couple other big things coming out this month. We've got the new expansion for Civ 6. We also have Planetfall. Age of Wonders is coming out sometime soonish. There's a ton of stuff coming out right away. So we're gonna hit it hard and heavy and see what we can get going. So so that's pretty much all I've got for today.
All right, well, then we will wrap it up there. Thank you everybody for supporting this show, for the excellent discussion in the chat. Thanks especially to our Patreon supporters, Old Man Manson, and our 2 anonymous supporters. Don't forget to slam that like button before you leave to tell us and YouTube that you appreciate this weekly content. If you're listening after the fact on SoundCloud or iTunes, we thank you for your follows, likes, subscribes, reviews, and anything else you can do there. And hey, feel free to join us on Tuesday at noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the live show where you can interact with us and other listeners and be a part of the discussion. The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Asheninity on behalf of Subsidian. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.